I'm Eric Parker. This morning on CT 21, our entire program is a look back at the events of 9/11 from the people who lost loved ones like Judy Keene, Bruce DePriest, and Juliette Brisman Zuckerman, to the Channel 3 employees who were there in the aftermath, including Scott Haney, Kara Sunland, and photojournalist Mike Kopelman, and how baseball brought us together in the worst of times. It's all ahead this Sunday, September the 5th. CT 21 starts right now.
From Channel 3, this is Connecticut's most watched current affairs program, CT 21, with Eric Parker, sponsored by Hartford Healthcare.
Good morning. On Saturday, our country will mark 20 years since the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Nearly 3,000 people died that day, among them 54-year-old insurance executive Richard Keene of Wethersfield, husband of Judy, father of Sean, Timothy, Heather, Patrick, and Matthew. Attorney Mark Brisman was just 34 years old when he lost his life at 2 World Trade Center. Husband of Juliette, he was also a dad to a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. 54-year-old Peter Gay had just spent the weekend with his family in his home state of Massachusetts and boarded a plane to California for work, as he did regularly. American Airlines Flight 11 was the first plane to hit the Trade Center. Peter Gay was the brother-in-law of our own Bruce DePriest. Bruce is joining me this morning, along with Judy Keene and Juliette Brisman Zuckerman. Thank you, ladies, for joining us remotely. Bruce, I want to start with you here in the studio. 20 years has passed. When you think back on that day and think about hearing the news about your brother-in-law, what's the strongest memory you have?
Well, I was working the morning shift that day, and, the memory I have is I was watching CBS this morning after we got done with our news, and a plane hit the World Trade Center. And at first it was thought to be, a bad pilot error. And that was the talk. And then all of a sudden the second plane hit. And then, of course, it started becoming evident that it was a terrorist attack. And I found out that one of the planes, American Airlines Flight 11, was the one that came out of Boston and went to Los Angeles. And I called up my wife then, Laurel, and I said, "Are you aware of what's going on in New York City?" And she goes, "Oh my God, Bruce, Peter takes that flight every week." So I called the law firm up in Massachusetts. It's a huge family of lawyers, and Peter was just one of 7. My wife was the only girl in the family. And I said, "Are you aware of what's going on in New York City? Where's Peter? Did he board that plane?" So they called Raytheon, which is the company he worked for, and they found out that he was indeed on that flight. So by later in the morning, I knew that, Peter was gone.
I want to turn to Judy Keene, who should be familiar to so many of our viewers. We've covered so much with you, Judy, over the years. Your husband, you knew, was in New York City, but you didn't know he was at the World Trade Center. Take us back to when you got sort of the news, and I know it was over a prolonged period of time for your family, right, Judy?
It was. He usually went to work in New York when he went in Midtown Manhattan, where the Marsh McLennan main office was. And he really loved going to the World Trade Center, but I did not know that he was there that day. He had taken the train down the night that morning, and, we had talked the night before, but I didn't remember what he said if he said anything about the World Trade Center.
And for days,
and it was
your
a
family
while.
wondered, right, about what had happened, and had he been there, and was he one of the lives that was lost?
Yes, I did not find out really, it wasn't even full confirmation, but at noontime I spoke with his office manager in Hartford, and she said that he had been on the 99th floor of Tower 1. And of course, by then I knew that 2 towers had been attacked. And I don't remember if I knew that they had collapsed at that time, but it was very likely that he was in the first event.
Now, Juliette Brisman Zuckerman, you got a phone call from your husband that morning, who worked in 2 World Trade Center, and you were busy getting your kids to preschool, and he then called the house. Tell us what happened that morning with your husband.
Yes, I was focused on getting my son William, who was 2, for his first day of preschool, and my daughter was returning as a 4-year-old, my daughter Rachel. So I was actually out shuttling them to school, and I didn't answer his cell. He called me on my cell phone. I missed the call. So he wound up calling my house, and my sister happened to be staying there, and she answered the phone call. And he had said something had happened and they were being evacuated, and he was on his way home. And so she answered the call, and told me when I got back, and we didn't think much of it at the time because that was before the second tower was hit. So after the first tower, they evacuated. They were trying to evacuate everyone else.
Juliet, I know after this, with 2 young children and going through this tragedy, you said you went through some counseling yourself, and that inspired you to help others. Tell us about, sort of the legacy of 9/11 in your life.
Yes, absolutely. Long legacy. The children were so young. So we just basically at the time focused on keeping their routines normal, having them go to school. I had a very close family on both sides, my late husband's and my own, neighbors, community. So we focused on that for a couple of years. And when the kids got older and really realized that what had happened, the immensity of losing their father, we sought therapy, bereavement counseling, and that kind of inspired me. We really were helped very much to first sign up as a volunteer bereavement facilitator with the Den in Greenwich, and then many years later, volunteering myself, working with children who had lost a parent. Then I went on to get licensure as a marriage and family therapist at Fairfield University. I'm now licensed and working on my first book, a memoir titled A Heart Returned, which will be out early next year. So I'm very excited that I'm able to now use our family tragedy to help others with healing, with hope, and that's my story.
And I think that what you just said, having good come out of tragedy, Judy, I know you've tried to do that with the Keene Foundation. I know our viewers are familiar with the Coveside Carnival, the big fundraiser. Tell us about what has grown out of this tragedy for your family.
Well, we started very soon after 9/11, probably October, to develop a board of directors and come up with a mission. And over the years, in 2008, we actually opened a 9/11 Memorial Sports Center in town, which now has visitors all day long. It's near the senior center. There's a preschool there, and a basketball and soccer. All the sports are played in the gym all day, every day. And now we have after-school programs at 5 of our elementary schools in town. And these are enrichment programs where kids stay after school for an extra hour or so. And from chess to fashion design to science, music, art, and athletics and the after-school time. Certainly. So it's fun for the kids.
Yeah, and certainly an incredible legacy for your husband as well. Bruce, I want to ask you, Richard Keene was one of 7. You talked about your brother-in-law having a big family. This isn't just a story about 3,000 people who lost their lives that day. Right. It is, but it's a much bigger effect, right?
It's a much bigger effect. It's a huge family that dealt with this tragedy. But as you said, a lot of good things come out of bad things. My sons, back at the time they were 13 and 15. Now they're 33 and 35, which I can't believe. And we still, they still go to memorial services every single year. My sons are musicians, and they're good musicians. My son David plays guitar. My son Brennan plays drums. And in the aftermath of 9/11, they held concerts in memory and benefit of 9/11. So a lot of good things came out of the bad things. And of course, the family, being a huge family, we all supported each other. We came together at the family cottage in Onset, Cape Cod. Yep. And just supported each other. And it was nice to be comforted by so many people around us. Peter, he was one of these take charge guys. He was a brilliant engineer for Raytheon, and he was also pretty tough. So, he would tell all the other family members that, if you don't fix this or keep this right at the cottage, you're going to be in trouble. So he was a pretty tough guy.
An incredible legacy. And 3 different guests who show that there's still a lot to talk about from 9/11. Bruce DePriest, thank you for being with us. Judy Keene, Juliet Brisman Zuckerman, thank you for being with us as well. We appreciate you all being here. We'll be thinking about you all next Saturday. Later in our program, how baseball helped the country to heal. We're talking with Mets manager at the time, Bobby Valentine. And next, Scott Haney, Kara Sunland, and Channel 3 photojournalist Mike Kopelman shared their memories from Ground Zero. Stay with us.